Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Still Loading podcast, where we explore leadership for the digital age. I'm delighted today to be joined by Lucy Woolfenden, who is the founder of the Scale Up Collective. And it basically looks at how you can create a part-time CMO experience in your startup and scale up as you're scaling. And I'd love you to share, Lucy, with everyone about how you started this, because I love the story, and that's why I kind of reached out to you and wanted you to come on.
Oh, hello, and thank you for having me on. So I started off in marketing about 20 years ago. I spent the first 10 years in advertising agencies, always working on launching brands we're launching brands within brands, but it was always that excitement, that blue sky part that really drove me. And then I went into client side and started at Skype. And now we launched Skype for mobile. So this was before there was Zoom, before there was WhatsApp on your phone, and really getting people to start using video on their phone in the first place. And then went on to a couple of other startups, including Starling Bank and Yolt. And then when I was on my second maternity leave, I started before even, the week the baby was born, I had friends calling going, we're just about to launch, but we don't know what to do, or we need to get some funding, but we don't have a growth strategy, and started to realize that there was a real niche, that marketing only works when it's consistent and it's thought and it's focused. But often startups in their very nature are very frenetic about what they do. So they really need that structure and support working with them, but not necessarily in a full-time capacity, because most startups can't afford that price tag. And so where I started was actually as a company of one, thinking that I'd love to be a company of one with 4 clients 1 day a week. What I then realized was actually 1 day a week wasn't enough to really shift that needle. You were more doing firefighting and supporting, but nothing really about these big leaps. So change that structure so that we first would work on that strategy, research the audience, get to the audience and market better, and then build that strategy. And then I'd work with them in a slightly smaller capacity as that advisor, as that part-time CMO. And then over the sort of last year or so, just starting to build up that team and realised it was much more fun with friends, and brought in a user research manager to do the research to such an incredible level, so that we can really focus on, who is that target audience? Who should we be talking about? What is that behaviour and motivations about them that really will get them excited about your brands and get them to commit to you? And that's really, build that up so that we've got 5 of us in-house now, and then a number of partners that we work with on a monthly basis.
Yeah, no, I'd love it, because it's almost like you did your own product market fit just by your friends kind of saying, can you help me? Because they knew your skill set and they were like, can you help me? But it's kind of complementary to the work that I am passionate about, which is leadership development for scale ups and startups, because traditionally leadership development is either in the military, or if you're a high potential in a massive corporation where they invest in it. And I was like, but we still need good leaders in scale ups, even more so. And so kind of that's how my thought process went. It was like, well, I want to be able to offer this to scale ups so that they can invest in it as they wish. With your part-time CMO, what I love about it as well is you've also adapted and brought more people along the way. And this is almost like your leadership development story, from just being by yourself to then working with a team. How have you changed? First of all, how did you kind of have the gumption, in a sense, to start on your own, and then how did you change to then bring this team around you?
Yeah, it's such a good question, because in all honesty, I've never seen myself as a leader, and I think looking back in past jobs, it wasn't I brought a lot to other jobs, so I don't think necessarily the leadership was the core skill and something that I've worked on. So when I started, actually, I thought, I'd be a company of one, it'll be really easy. My first clients were actually all within my network. There were people I already knew. And as we've grown, actually, a lot of that is still about referral. And it always will be, especially in a investment heavy business. Where we started to bring on, actually, my first hire was Ness, who was actually a client of mine at the time. I was mentoring her. And I I knew from the beginning to work with her that I'd love to bring her on the team, but obviously that would be completely politically incorrect. So we waited until I put the job spec out for a client lead, and it just all sort of fell into place. So that was amazing because we'd already worked together for about 9 months, just in a different capacity. And I knew that she'd fit really well with this. I knew that she'd be able to bring value to the clients. And starting really, it's always about, I think that product market fit is brilliant, but we're always developing. Look at the last 3 years, and every 6 months have shifted slightly because we've realized that that's what's happening to the market. So I started the marketing accelerator back at the end of 2020, when a number of my clients or potential clients were expecting funding, but it didn't happen. But they still needed to scale just without any of that budget. And so decided that, all different businesses, but similar problems. So let's get them on a call. We can, between myself and the partners that I worked with, from SEO to PR to web design, branding, that we could all come on and actually teach these founders how to do it. And month by month, the marketing accelerator became a bit more professional, if you will, with a syllabus behind it and the structure to it. But actually it just started because these people needed to know how to scale and needed those skills right now. At that moment. So everything has been quite natural. And we talk a lot about product market fit and about how it's never about reaching perfection. It's always about step by step improving every time. And that's the approach that we've taken with this business. I'm really lucky that a lot of our clients are good friends that I can also talk to and ask questions and make sure, are we doing the right thing? What more could we be doing to help serve your business? And that's helped us scale so far along the way.
Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant. And something that has come up in other episodes is this concept of servant leadership. And what you're describing there for your clients does sound very much like that, where you're trying to do the best so that they can achieve what they need to achieve, but you're ultimately serving them and serving the team, rather than positional leadership, which is, in a sense, I'm the CMO, do what I say, and that's how it goes. In a sense, with the part-time tag, you can actually be a lot more like, how can I help you? I'm not here all the time, so I can't tell you what to do, but how can I help you?
Yeah, I think that's it's interesting. I didn't realize there's a phrase for it, but yes, I definitely think we fit into that. I also think, just as a person, I've never been very good by being given direct, this is what you do it now, and it fits within this box, and you sit at your desk from 9 till 5 and you never leave your desk. I've never been that person, so I think I would never expect other people to as well. I don't think that's how you get the best out of somebody.
No, definitely not. It keeps coming up again and again, and I'm sure it will continue to be like that until the end of time. I'd love to know a little bit more about you and your sort of story, and if you could share a leader who influenced you in your own leadership development journey.
Oh yes, so this is actually I spent a long time thinking about this question, because actually I've been really lucky that I've had a lot of great role models really early on. One of my first I always think it was a coming of age account, was I worked at Rainey Kelly on the Land Rover account, and I had three key bosses really. Mark Rolfe was the chairman and the creative director. Les Knight was my client, and Chris Hunton ran the global account team. And they were all very calm, they were active listeners, and they were hard workers. And although they're very different personalities, they taught me a lot about the importance of creating relationships to build trust and then get the results. And especially when you're in advertising, you're surrounded by extroverts and people that, want their voice to be heard above everyone else's. And that just isn't me. And I couldn't fit myself within that mold. I was very shy. And, I think what they taught me, Les taught me that he didn't have to shout or tell people, but actually if he could grow those relationships with his multiple agencies, that actually he didn't need to know exactly how something had to be done, but he could motivate people to get the best results. I think, they all taught me how to get my voice heard and how to grow my confidence and deliver and become a leader. And actually then, I also had Kathy Powell, who was an account director. I worked with her at a number of places and still a very close friend. But she was my sort of American cheerleader, motivator. And, even on, I was doing the marathon and I had a really bad injury, but a bit stubborn, so I wouldn't stop. And she met me at mile 23 and she came onto the marathon with me and was running along with me, giving me her like motivational chat. And it took about, I don't know, almost a kilometre till someone realised that she didn't have a number and she wasn't even wearing trainers. But she was just like there with her arm around me going, you can do it, you can do it. And as soon as she sort of was pulled off by some security, I just ran up to that next person and was like, my friend just told me we might as well keep running because it's going to hurt anyway, so you just have to get to the end. And then managed to did the last mile holding hands with this person. And I think that's the sort of leadership that I've always had, is that that person that's just, they're behind you and that they're supporting you at every step, and that really helps to bring out the best in you as a person.
Oh, I love that story. That's brilliant. I can't believe she ran with no number, but also the fact she didn't have trainers on and no whatever. She's running in heels, everyone's like, what's going on?
It was hilarious. I just remember thinking, I don't know why someone hasn't pulled her off yet. And then finally someone was like, oi. I was like,
At least it distracted you from the pain for a minute because you were just confused by what was going on with the situation. And I love the fact you helped someone else as well towards the end. You were like, come on, we're going to do this together. Because I think I did a marathon once and it's really hard. They're not joking when they talk about the wall. It's a real thing. And you're just like, I could quite happily just disintegrate into dust right now. I don't really care about anything on earth. It's a really strange scenario. That's a lovely story. And that motivation thing, so someone cheerleading you and championing you, I'm trying to sort of think about this from the work that you do with your clients, because I think part of that service, being a service to a client, I think part of it is sometimes just cheerleading, just like, you can do it, well, you can do it, like, I'm going to offer you this suggestion, but essentially I sometimes feel the consulting I do is almost like business counseling. It's not consulting sometimes, it's just more like, yeah, you're doing the right thing, this is great, keep going, you can do it.
Do I think it's really interesting. Ness, my client lead, and I were having a conversation the other day about should we do some sort of coaching course or something just to get those parts, because it is about helping people see that, cut through everything. As founders, they get bombarded. As a client was saying yesterday, he gets 10 different lead generation cold emails a day about people going, this is how to grow your business. I know how everybody else is doing it wrong. This is the right way. And it's so hard to see through all that rubbish of just like, what should I be doing? What should I focus on? And how do I get there? And what we've also found is that quite a lot of clients, as well as that motivation, they also want somebody else to make the decision. That decision fatigue is just so real, isn't it? As a founder, it's like, I don't want to be asked any of the questions or to have to make any of the decisions. I just want someone who knows what they're doing to tell me what to do. And that is part of our role too, is to really understand their business and understand their audience, and then be able to just cut through everything and cut through all the ideas and say, right, this is what you need to focus on this week, because this is going to get to our greater goal. And that's where I think we can help best. But,
no, I can see that. And I think the coaching qualification is a great idea. I did one and it transformed the way I approach things. I just couldn't believe so much could change from good questions. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. So if anyone's listening, definitely think about doing a coaching qualification, or even listen to coaching conversations. Like, there's different podcasts that actually have coaching conversations, so it's fascinating to hear someone almost like unlock from the questions.
Oh, that's so interesting. Okay, we'll do that. Thank you.
I'll put some links in the description box below to ones I've listened to that I thought were really great. With your clients, because you're in a really unique position to see lots and lots of founders, and ultimately they're starting their leadership development journey right then and there as a founder. What are the characteristics of a good leader / founder that you have seen, and what are some not so great ones that you've also seen? Not your clients, obviously.
All my clients are perfect.
Oh, absolutely.
Actually, you know, it's often it is actually the second time founders that are more confident because they've done it before and understand actually that it's not. I suppose one thing that's always comes up is how much you spend on sales and marketing to make sure that people are getting to your product versus the product. That one great founder, Stuart Ahern, came on and actually talked to our accelerator once, and he said, what I've learned from launching 2 businesses is that you don't have a business without sales and marketing. There's no point in having the best product ever if nobody knows about it and you don't have any revenue. And I think that really helps shape people's their approach to the business. I think openness is a really important factor. Openness to not just thinking that they've already have the answers. Well, what we do in our approach is always about bringing in your customers, bringing in your audience, listening and learning and scaling with them. So anybody that just has a clear focus that says, I know what I'm doing and I'm not going to talk to it, I don't need to hear from anybody else. Why should I talk to my clients? I already know what they think. Probably just don't. And that's, you know, we need that openness. We need that active listening to be happening to really help scale that business and to be able to focus on the right things. So that's the most important one, I think. But I do think that decision fatigue is hard. And I think, you know, they do at some point have to have confidence in their own ability to just make decisions. And you know, you see that sort of, you know, we all feel these waves, and so do the founders of big businesses. It doesn't stop just because you've got a few million funding. It's continual, and they've got to really be able to make those decisions and be able to lead that team. So confidence is a really important one.
Yeah, and I'd also add to that with the decision fatigue is delegation. Like the art of delegation is real. Like you say, you know, kind of give it to people that you know are competent and you can trust, and you've built that relationship, you understand, and you set clear expectations, but also don't do everything yourself. I've seen that with limiting growth when one founder, the term for it is positional leadership, in terms of like they are the leader because of the position, but what it means is everyone's then trying to cater for what their wishes are, but rather than be empowered to do the work to go and achieve the mission. So yeah, it's very interesting. I think I have another question for you. I'd love to know a little bit more about something that helped you on your leadership development journey, because usually it's when something didn't go exactly as planned. We learn from it.
I think it's something we've probably already touched on, but the first one is that growing up in advertising and just being surrounded by extroverts and people that are so confident and think their voice is the most important voice in the room, is, you know, I try to be that extrovert, and I'm never going to be that person. You know, I know I've got lots of great friends who are extroverts. There's nothing wrong with being an extrovert, but I just can't be that person. And I think finally accepting that I didn't need to be like that and I didn't need to fit into that mold really helped me to grow. Grow as a leader and grow as you know, as a team player as well. And then I think secondly, to your point of that positional leadership, learning that actually to be a leader doesn't mean that you have to be the dominant voice in the room the whole time, and that actually sitting back and listening first to get everybody else's ideas is actually the most important part, because one, it motivates people, but also nobody knows everything. And marketing, as everything else that's happening, we're in tech, we're marketing, everything's changing so much. You can't expect to be the most knowledgeable person in the room. So actually sitting back and listening and being the last person to speak has actually really helped me grow as a leader as well and help motivate others.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I don't think people, you know, value listening enough. I think if we listened more, I think there is a book that says something like that. It's something like Listen, and she talks about how people don't really listen to each other. And the other book that's a brilliant one for the power of introverts is Quiet, which I thought was great because I'm an ambivert, so I'm a bit in the middle. sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, no way am I going to that room or that conference, or it's not happening, I'm out. And I also know when the battery's running low, because I'm just like, that's it, I'm going. But equally, I do need to be around people to kind of stimulate like my thinking and stuff. So it's a funny one. I'm in between both sections and not really an extreme on either side.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? And I think that has changed in the last few years as well. I do see that more of a trend, that we're not seeing these big people that want to jump on the table and shout and scream and get everybody in. There are actually other ways to motivate people and to get people excited.
Well, I think in terms of like digital leadership, I actually think because of the way that we now communicate online and digitally, and we can, amplify our voice without jumping on the table, as you say, we can amplify our voice by doing podcasts or writing and sharing and disseminating that information. So I actually think it's great at this moment in time to be who you are and share your position and your point of view as a leader and all the rest of it, without worrying about how to contort into this massively extroverted behavior. Because I do agree with you. I think in the past, that was how you sort of almost expressed your leadership. I don't think it's the same ball game now. We're in this digital age.
Yeah, great time to be.
I know, I love it. Yeah. With the work with your clients as well, I'd love to know a little bit about like what are the trends in leadership that you're seeing from the founders you're working with, and also the kind of types of companies and services that people are creating now. Because I've seen definitely a bit of a significant shift towards much more of a focus on sustainability in businesses, or at least how to incorporate that more. I'd love to know a bit more about what you've seen with working with your clients.
Yeah, definitely. We've got a number of diversity and inclusion clients, sustainability from both the point of view of the tech side, but also, how do we as homeowners, or how can we be more sustainable? And, that's also shifted from helping the environment to obviously be more affordable right now. In terms of the sort of trends in leadership, I think we've definitely seen that customer first versus profit first change, and that is slightly that's slightly a trend in tech, because often your first funding isn't about becoming profitable, but showing that you've got that potential for growth. So often, actually, with Yolt and with Starling and with other of our clients now, it was about getting as many bums on seats and proving that you had traction in the market, that people wanted to keep coming back. So that focus was able to be, which is a massive luxury for businesses, let's not beat about the bush, but that you could focus on actually just building great relationships. And that's something that we very much see. A lot of our new business comes from referrals, be it partners we work with or other clients or people I've worked with in the past. One person messaged a couple of months ago, and I'd worked with him 12 years ago and hadn't spoken to him since, and was like, oh, I just spoke to them and I think they need your help. And that's brilliant. And so it for us is about that new business, but also about retaining clients and really feeling that we go home at the end of the day being happy with what we've done and feeling that we've achieved it. The other one is around flatter structures. I think it doesn't seem to be that triangle anymore. What we're seeing is, especially with co-founders, but also single founders that then bring in a good senior management in the first place. Your CTO, who's going to deal with all the technical builds and that side, your CRO, who's going to be building it. You might then have where we come in with the marketing or sales, but really thinking about understanding those different parts of the tech business, because your CMO can't run your tech side because they're not going to have the knowledge. There's such different parts of knowledge. So really bringing out that flatter structure, and then also just that part about creating spaces for people to thrive, and understanding that if you tell people you need to be in your office 9 to 5, don't leave a minute before, that they're going to be packing their bag at 4:59 and doing the minimum. But if you sort of take away that micromanaging and help them really grow as a person, and giving that sort of safe space to be creative, that they will drive growth a lot faster. I saw this a lot actually. I've worked in really toxic environments. We probably won't go that way, but I got to Yolt, which is funded by ING. So it's I was the only non-Dutch person on the management team, and it was just a very different environment. It was very much, we're about progress. We're not about perfection. If something happened, that understanding that things don't always go right, and it's not about blaming people. It's actually about just fixing it. And what that meant was that we had a very open culture. So when things started to not look great, nobody was trying to hide it or blame somebody else. It was, okay, this hasn't worked, so what can we do to fix it? And we'd all jump on and fix that problem quickly. And it meant that we could see growth a lot faster, and that everybody worked a lot more cohesively as a team as well. So it was just a much better environment from mental health perspective, but also just from, actually from a business growth perspective. It isn't about being nice to people, it's about delivering results at the same time. That we could see.
I love what you're saying, because that's kind of why I do what I do, right? I want people, like, my mission with like Slate Digital is to ensure people have great working environments, right? Great leaders, great working environments. Ultimately, that's because you grow in a business. It doesn't mean that you don't have the benefits of like profit or like growing a business and being successful. But it's not mutually exclusive, just because, it's actually a business imperative, like you just described. If the culture's toxic, it leads to blame, which means you can't solve the problems because you're not working on them, so you can't grow. There you go. There's your simple equation. But it's funny how so many people forget that, and it can really corrode. And I think what's fascinating working, in the startup scene for a long time and other companies, is it doesn't take long to turn bad. It's like really you have to maintain it and think about it. And if it's already gone bad, it's probably more worse than you think. It's fascinating to kind of witness that in certain organizations. I mean, I don't know if you've seen that as well with the people you've worked with and all the rest of it, but I feel like that's it's delicate, very delicate, very quick to turn sour.
Yeah, and especially if you're working with, junior team members, it's really hard actually going in as a single marketeer in a remote working business. And that's what we're often supporting that person, because as they grow, you're working in a creative job, but you've no one to bounce those ideas off. And often, you might only have half an hour or so with your team every day, and the rest of the time you're supposed to just be doing. And so it's got to be about creating a space that they feel comfortable in, and they feel that they're empowered to, ask questions or try things out, or, go and get help when you need it. And if you don't feel like that, if you feel like you just have to sort it out and do it, you just end up doing very little. And that's what we see when we come into businesses that maybe don't have the right culture already set in. I've definitely heard the phrase culture isn't for startups, culture's for when, after Series A, and you're like, oh, okay, let's wind that one back a little bit.
Yeah, I know. It's funny though, because I feel like understanding the importance and impact of culture is something that you only really get to understand after maybe you've had a bit of experience of bad ones, of good ones. And so if you've never really experienced like these things, you don't value it yet. And so that's kind of one of those things I don't think is solvable. If you've got someone who's got a fantastic idea but potentially hasn't worked in multiple different organizations, you can't teach that. That's just time.
Yeah, it's so true. And like what culture is and how it's demonstrated has changed so much. In advertising agencies, it meant that you wanted to go out and get drunk 3 or 4 times a week, which, to be honest, when I was in my 20s was like the best thing ever. I loved going out with my team every night. But then that changes, doesn't it? That's not what everybody wants to do. And when you have children or you have other commitments, you also can't just make a decision at 5 o'clock that you're going to go out. So it has to be about how can you create the culture that's right for your team, and actually what works and actually makes them feel more comfortable to do that job. And thinking, and I think we're just working on that at the moment as a small company, and a young company, you know, what does that mean? Like, what benefits should we be bringing in? We're working with a wellness benefits platform, actually, Juno, and that's a really interesting one that's been teaching us a lot about, you know, what should we be giving people and what should teams be receiving and helping on a daily basis, on a monthly basis from their businesses.
Oh, that's really interesting. Juno, you said, the platform.
Yeah.
And have you seen anything else work to, you know, almost like develop that culture remotely within these different scale ups as you're working with them?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I don't know if you saw that over lockdown. A lot of companies for the first 6 months or so, it was fine. That whole remote working didn't really start to show, but then actually those with poorer cultures actually started to really then crumble by the end of that first year. And they really had to think about it, and they really had to support people. Um, I think what we've seen is it's more an attitude and a respect for people. I think that's what, for me, culture comes down to. It's not about how much money you're spending on trips to, you know, company trips abroad, although they're really fun and amazing. That's not going to make you love your job. What's going to make you love your job is how you feel about getting up and going in every day, and how you feel about, you know, going that extra mile and making sure that you are delivering on the values of the company, and how you're treating everybody around you. It's not just about how you treat your clients, but how we treat everybody, from, you know, the people in our co-working space to our partners that we work with, as well as our clients and our team and our close team. And I think that's really what culture really boils down to for me.
Yeah, no, I think it, with remote teams and working with my clients, or I definitely have discovered, is you've got to be intentional with your culture. You can't just leave it, because I think when we were physically in an office, you could almost just, you know, the proximity of another human built the culture inadvertently, whether it was positive or negative, whatever. But when it's remote, you have to be intentional with your design and actually think about ways in which to bring people together in informal ways, formal ways, all the various kinds of, you know, social whatever. But yeah, it's interesting. The companies that haven't invested in that, I see they're struggling now.
Yeah, we had at Skype, we were very much, although we were based in London, you know, a lot of all of the agencies I work with, all the partners I work with, were in America, and I was there sort of 20-30% of the time. So as a team, we were very disparate, and we were very regularly in the same space. But we had a really strong culture because we all worked really well together. And Jackie Lee Joe was led our team, and she is very much that person that would always have time, wherever she was, she'd always have time to speak to you, she'd always have time to listen to you, but she'd also was a crazy hard worker who would also just encourage you and motivate you to also always go that extra mile. You know, nothing was ever finished. You know, we could always push it. How can we make that idea a little bit bigger, and how can we make it a little bit crazier? And, you know, that's how we did all the great things that we did at Skype, was because of that, you know, that consistent sort of nudging and questioning about, oh, but what else could we do? Oh, have we thought about this? And, you know, what is possible? And that was what really drove us. And it didn't matter whether we were in the same country or the same, I mean, we're very irregularly in the same time zone, let alone the same office, but we all felt very much as a team driving towards the same goals.
Well, I mean, what you're describing there is fantastic leadership, right? She was able to drive that sort of behavior and that leadership through her, you know, own motivations, but also motivating you guys. Great questioning. And I think one of the things I've been reflecting on recently is that, you know, quiet quitting, I actually think part of it is a lack of leadership, right? People haven't had the necessary development in their own leadership. I mean, leadership isn't it's not something you can just sort of slap on. It's something you develop inside. It's who you are. How do you express yourself? How do you get the most out of people? It's a long game. That's why the title of this podcast is still loading. I was always like, it's never finished, right? That's the whole point of it. And I think the quiet quitting thing is, in a remote culture, if you don't have great leaders, as you just described, who do push you, question you, check in with you, build that culture, you're just going to tag out. You'll turn up, you'll do what you need to do, and you'll tag out. But you will go for the extra mile if you're with a great leader who you know cares about you. I think that's probably one of the factors, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you know, in advertising, it was normal like for people to move on every 3 years, and that partly was because the culture was very, you know, mono in that sort of, you know, this is how we are. This is, you know, this is who fits in, and this is who doesn't. So people did change a lot because, you know, they wanted the pay rises and they wanted the different, you know, the grass is always greener, I suppose. But then people move on again, and you don't see that in other industries. You don't see that sort of change where it's normal that every 2.5, 3 years you're going to find a different job.
Yeah. Well, I think what that's interesting to think about with a scale up, because actually the average tenure in a startup scale up in the UK at least is about 14 months. So people are changing quite a lot, you know, in those companies, because those companies are changing quite a lot. So there is that factor of you know, you're going to have to be intentional to get that culture built quickly. You know, you can't just wait for it to kind of emerge. You've got to be like, this is the culture, this is what we do, and this is how you're going to put it together. I do think there's a lot of opportunities though to make work really great in a way that we've never seen before in terms of possibility.
Yeah, no, that's so true and interesting. I didn't know that startup, so it's not surprising, I suppose. But also, it's very different from a marketing point of view. It's very different skills. Being that first person in a startup that has to go from nothing to something is a very different skill than being able to go in and like lead the marketing team at Nike, for example. Both are incredible, and you know, I think it's understanding what skill set you have and what skill set you need at each point of your you know, your business's journey is really important to actually seeing that success.
Yeah, because you're there with founders and up to about seed A. That's kind of your sweet spot. That's where you're holding space for them. And I agree, it's a totally different skill set once you get to like B and C. That's a different ball game. You'll need to be able to manage a team, exactly. Because with my target audience, I'm looking at that B to C level. So you've already got a company, it's established, but now you really need to think about investing in your people and getting the culture right to get to that super unicorn whatever ninja superstar, etc. Put buzzword in here, but yeah, they're really interesting. I'd love for the final thing for today, what are your 3 top tips for leaders in the digital age?
So, I think the first one is about progress, not perfection, and you know, thinking about it's what we follow in marketing, but it's also just a great rule of business. And you know, that 1% rule of always looking at how can we improve, what are we doing better this week, you know, not looking back and doing those traditional wash-ups going what went wrong, but is what did we learn that we could do better for this next project. Is really important, distilling that from the beginning. I think the openness and active listening to empower people is really important, and help open those plans. And you know, I think also just that making sure you tell everybody the whole story. I've definitely, when I was, you know, more junior, just been told bits about the project that I needed that were directly important to me. But actually, if I understood the whole story and how I fitted into the puzzle, I'd be much more effective. And I think trying to instill that is really important. And then thirdly, something that I've loved starting my business and growing it is this collaboration versus competition. I partnered with lots of different people that could on paper be seen as my competition, but actually we've worked together, we've created content together, we've gone off and worked on projects together, and it has massively benefited my business as well as theirs. You know, we talk about it as, you know, dancing on other people's dance floors and being in front of new audiences, but I think that's been one of the most wonderful parts of the last 3 years that I hadn't anticipated, was that ability of finding partners within close circles and within potential competitions that have actually gone on and been really useful for business and myself as well.
I love that. I want to have this on a t-shirt or a tote bag, the dancing on other people's dance floors, because I think that's amazing. I think that's perfect, and it sums up kind of the approach that the Scale Up Collective has, right? And I want more people to be dancing on each other's dance floors. I just think that's wonderful. People can get in touch with you how?
Our website is thescaleupcollective.com, and then we're very much around on LinkedIn. So if you follow me, I think it's at Lucy Wolf, but Lucy Woolfenden is, you'll find us.
Yes, and I'll be putting all the links to everything in the description box below. But I know if you are looking for some help with your marketing, you need a part-time CMO, or you just want to know more about what Lucy can offer you and her Scale Up Collective, please check her out. She's brilliant. I've loved chatting with her and getting to know her. So please do check her out. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Still Loading podcast. It's been a real pleasure to hear about you and your own leadership development journey. And I'm wishing you lots and lots of success in the future.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been great fun.
Thanks. See you soon.
Bye-bye.